Attendees are now allowed to join.
The September 9th, 2021 Whatcom County Planning Commission meeting is called to order. I'll call the roll. Robert Bartel. Robert Bartel. Yeah, Kelvin Martin, that's me. I am here. Atul Deshmani.
Here.
Jim Hansen.
Here.
Stephen Jackson. Stephen Jackson. Oh, there we are. Thank you. Kimberly Lund.
Here.
John Mayberry.
Here.
Natalie McClendon. Natalie McClendon. I can see your name there, Natalie, but not sure if you can hear us. And Dominic Masseri.
Here.
Thank you. All right, please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, normally, we would have, okay, and I see Natalie, I see you there. Normally, we would have department update, but Mark Personius, department director, is out of town, so we're we're not having department update tonight. So what we have now is open session for public comment. And I know we have some attendees here. We have a public hearing on our agenda tonight, and we will have a public hearing for that, and that is capital facilities budget. And so we won't take any comments during open session for public comment. We are having a work session on marijuana production laws, agriculture, and so on here in the county. And it is appropriate if someone wanted to comment about that, because we're only having a work session, you are allowed to do that in the public comment period. And I'm going to ask Tammy, I'll defer to her because I never remember how to raise your hand if you're on a phone. But you can raise your hand on the phone. I see we have 6 attendees. If anyone's interested. Yeah. Thank you. I think you have the list there.
I do. And so welcome to the meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live and the audio is being recorded. Will be posted on the county website. Members of the public may join the meeting online or by phone. If you are watching live at this time and you wish to join the meeting to speak, the instructions on how to join the meeting are at the bottom of the web page where you found the link to watch this meeting. So the browser tab should still be open on your device. You should just be able to go back one, click on there, and use the appropriate tab to join the meeting. So during the open public comment session, as the chair said, speakers may not speak to items that are scheduled on the agenda for the public hearing tonight. So that would be the CIP items. So please, to virtually raise your hand to speak, please press the hand icon if you're using the internet, and if you're calling by phone, it is *9 to raise your hand. So if basically when you are called upon, you can press the microphone symbol to unmute yourself. If you joined by phone, when you hear a message that the host has unmuted your phone, please press *6. You will be called upon by name or based on the last 3 digits of the phone number if you've called in. When you are called upon, please state your full name for the record and direct all comments to the chair. Each speaker has 3 minutes to speak, and we will have a timer to show when your 3 minutes are up.
All right, thank you, Tammy. And we'll hold just a moment. Cliff Strong has come in to deliver our topic.
Connector needs to be promoted. I don't know how to do that.
Okay. One moment, please. We just have a technical issue we're going to deal with. Okay, Matt, I'm just going to talk to one of our staff for a moment. Matt, I have you showing as a panelist and a participant, so you should have full capabilities when it comes to your piece. Now that would be with the computer. Let me move you as an attendee if you are there. One moment. I'm going to see if this is Matt. I'm going to unmute *199 to see if that is one of our staff. One moment, please. Matt, are you *199?
Hello. Yes. No, I'm not staff. I'm sorry if I pushed that out of order there.
That's
I
fine.
was pressing that because I thought you were saying if you wanted to comment.
We will return to you for comment. Thank you for that.
We're just trying to fix a little technical glitch for one of the staff people.
Okay, so this is a caller. Let's try this one.
There's Matt. Yeah, no, that's not Matt.
That one's is Mark.
That's
This
Matt.
one.
Yeah, Tammy, this is me. Call on user 1. If you can promote me to panelist, that'd be great.
Okay, will do. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, thanks.
It's not giving me the option. Matt, it does not give me the option to promote you on the phone line.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. It doesn't give me the option to promote you to panelist. You are promoted to panelist on the computer, but not on the phone.
Okay, my sound doesn't work. So yeah, if you can just, whatever you're doing now, if you can do that when my report comes up, that'd be great.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, everybody. All right.
So the phone number ending in 199, go ahead. We are happy to hear from you. And I think you'll need to unmute yourself. And phone number that ends in 199, can you hear me okay? So
She's right there a minute ago. Let's see.
Tell them how to unmute again.
*6 to unmute your phone.
Hello?
Oh, there we go.
there we go.
Okay, so are you saying it's okay to comment now on the marijuana issue?
Sure, what it is that we are not having a public hearing on the marijuana issue tonight. So in the public open meeting, open session for public comment, you are allowed to talk about that.
Okay, well, I was unclear that I thought maybe we were supposed to wait and you might want us to do that before you talked about your work session, but that isn't happening and we should comment now in the open session.
We will have when we come around to where there's a public hearing, you'll have an opportunity to speak at that public hearing.
Okay, all right. Sorry for the confusion. So I will go ahead and read my comment now, if that's okay. My name is Rainbow Medicine Walker. I live in Kendall. Thank you for allowing me to comment here tonight. And I realize that enforcement is not the purview of this commission. However, I ask that as you consider amendments to our marijuana code, that you factor in the consistent lack of oversight and enforcement on marijuana operations from both state and county agencies. Please, let's not allow further operations to set up shop here in Whatcom County that cannot be adequately regulated. The population is growing in our county. Realistically, we are running out of places where marijuana outdoor greenhouse operations can be placed without having negative effects on surrounding residents. Tier 3 and larger outdoor greenhouse grows, as well as some Tier 2 and larger outdoor grow odors, are problematic and cannot be mitigated completely. Tier 3 and larger are industrial in nature, but PDS has said they did not support placing them in the industrial zone. And even if they were placed there, many of our zones are woven in amongst other zones, and you can have a light industrial zone marijuana operation right across the road from a rural zone. And all the problems of that operation then negatively impact those local rural residents. It is my understanding that this is the case with the large marijuana operation on the Kickerville Road in Ferndale that rural residents there have complained about. Density of canopy per property, as well as density of operations per geographic area, also needs to be considered as the widespread effects of these operations grow exponentially the larger they become and the more numbers of them there are. The Thus, I urge this commission to disallow any further outdoor greenhouse marijuana operations in Whatcom County. There are unresolved problems with the operations we already have. Let's not add more. Or I would ask, at the very least, that you limit further outdoor greenhouse operations to only Tier 1 and smaller. If fully enclosed indoor operations are to be allowed, they should be fully odor controlled and regulated. If Tier 3 and larger indoor operations are to be allowed, then they should be placed only in the industrial zones well away from nearby residents. If marijuana operations are to be allowed in any zones, then public notice for these operations needs to be more widespread and effective as the impacts reach far beyond the operational property lines. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Mark Ambler. Go ahead and speak.
Oh, I need to do something. Hold on.
Mark Ambler, can you hear me okay? And it looks like you need to unmute.
Check 1, 2, 3.
There we go. It's doing well.
Okay. Okay, sounds like we're good. Hey, my name is Mark Ambler, and I am a resident here. More specifically, I live in Bellingham, and I am a father. I got 2 kids, one 5-year-old girl and one 8-year-old girl. My wife and I grow cannabis here in town. My wife's dad, he was a research plant physiologist for the National Forest Service for like 40 years. So he came and helped me and showed me how to grow. And it was actually a really amazing thing that I've gone through. I've left engineering to do this, and it's really changed my life for the better, I think. And I think there's a lot of people that would want to do this for the rest of their life, like, make it a retirement thing, to just go have a farm. And the cheapest way to start a farm is to grow outdoors, or in a greenhouse if you have the money. So if you're eliminating the cheapest way and the way where you don't use high energy, it really looks bad, for the county. And I was looking it up. The county annually gets about $250,000 worth of excise tax money from the cannabis tax revenues. Specifically, it was $257,800 last year. But the RCW, the dedicated marijuana account, RCW 695540, it says specifically, I'm reading word by word, funds may only be distributed to jurisdictions that do not prohibit the siting of any state licensed marijuana producer, processor, or retailer. So you can see, like, Clark County, they went from like $2,000 a year to like $444,000 a year when they got rid of their bans. So like if you guys end up banning it, then we're gonna lose $250,000 for Whatcom County, and probably more than that because it goes up next year. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. And we're clean. We are super clean. I water by hand. There's not a drop of water that leaves my facility through my watering. I do it by myself, small scale, and we just got approval to expand. And this new set of things that you're putting in place, including the moratorium, made it so your poorest farmers who just spent 3 years trying to get an expansion are now having to wait for you guys to figure this out. So I just appreciate your time, and I hope you guys consider us real people. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak under open session? Okay, seeing none, let's, there we go, we got some more. I see Todd Baker. Go ahead, Todd.
Hi Hi there. My name is Todd Baker, and I live up in Kendall, and really appreciate the time to listen to us. I appreciate your guys' time. I appreciate the fact that we did this moratorium and everybody has a voice. I don't believe that that cannabis should be outlawed. I don't believe that it's a bad thing at all. I do believe, though, we need to have some regulations and some oversight and some rules in place, and that means like density. Farms shouldn't be dotted along rural highways and close to other operations. I think we should think about spreading them out, and especially having producer processors in more industrial settings. The big tier 3 operations certainly I don't believe should be in rural residential areas. The one nearest us looks like a prison. I don't think it belongs on a scenic highway. And I really would, hopefully in this discussion that everybody could work together. And I think we need some more enforcement. I really think somebody needs to oversee. More money needs to be put in for inspectors or enforcement people to come out and take care of the problems and the existing ones that we have now. I kind of mimic Rainbow's statements, and I really look forward to the process of seeing what kind of rules that we can put in place to protect everybody and support the industry as well. I think we can all work together and coexist as a community. But I just think we can't just let big money corporations come in and take over. It's going to hurt the small farmers in the long run. So anyway, I appreciate everybody's time, and that's what I have tonight. Thank you.
We have Jeremy Moberg. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Moberg.
Did we lose you there, Jeremy? Are you still with us, Jeremy? We're not hearing you. Okay, we'll try and get back to you, Jeremy. Joshua Rutherford, go ahead. Go ahead, Joshua.
Joshua, it's *6 to unmute.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Hi there. My name is Joshua Rutherford. I am a tier 2 producer processor here in Whatcom County. I just want to comment on the whole thing. I'm a very small producer. I'm probably quite literally the smallest cannabis producer in the state. I am owned and operated by myself on my own property with my wife and my 2 kids here. Actually, the pandemic, the rules being loosened so that I could have my child in there. My 2 kids has been huge for our family. And I grow outdoor. I grow in greenhouse. I've been approved with an ADM in 2017 with the planning committee. We went through great details on all that. I've been compliant in many ways. And I just want to comment that I want to have because I'm such a small producer and I'm struggling. I really am struggling to survive in this industry. I'm a unique player. I'm a breeder. I want to retain the ability to keep growing outdoors and to potentially move my grow. You know, if I decide that you know, I don't want to live next to my shitty neighbors anymore, that I want to move to another place in Whatcom County, that I want to be able to move my outdoor grow or expand it if the state allows. There's actually a bill that to allow for a craft producer license that would allow for me to expand to this license that would give me 20,000 square feet, but it would also give me the ability to sell direct to consumers, you know, like a sort of farm stand thing. And that's what I'm really interested in. You know, like I said, I don't have any employees. I'm not interested in having employees. I'm not interested in running a big business. I'm interested in breeding my cannabis, making a difference in the scene and the genetics we have here, and being able to sell direct to my neighbors like I used to in the medical days, which wouldn't be very much. It would be a very small thing, like these small farm stands we see all over the county that are unpermitted. And so I would just want to kind of bring that to the awareness of the committee that like that's on the horizon within the state, you know, that we're going to have this ability, and to also bring to the council's awareness that Whatcom County is a historic cannabis place. It didn't start in 2014. It started in the 80s. We literally built the cannabis glass scene here, which is a multi-billion. I mean, glass sells as art pieces for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a piece. Right here out of Birch Bay is where it started. We have a huge foundation, a huge heritage legacy farmer movement here in Whatcom County that are small producers that aren't breaking the rules. That we want to be able to do our thing, and we could bring a really cool, unique experience here to Whatcom County, similar to the craft beer scene, similar to the wine scene in Eastern Washington. And I just want to say this look for the county council to support us in this, you know, and support us in creating small craft producer business. Thank you very much for your time, and I just hope that the county council can not lump us all in with some of these bad actors. The bad actors really are very, very few. There's only one or two out of all of us. So thank you guys very much.
Jeremy, can we try again and see if we can get you up here?
Fix it.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I think it glitched out last time. My name is Jeremy Moberg. I am the president and founder of the Washington Sun Growers Association, which is now the Washington Sun and Craft Growers Association. And I wanted to provide some comments on the the revision of the regulation amendments. First off, I'd like to draw a parallel to cannabis production to hemp. Hemp is genetically the same plant and is grown exactly the same way. It is federally legal and is allowed in agricultural zones. It has the same odor producing as cannabis does. So it's important that the Planning Commission and the commissioners think about what the effect of mitigating odor on the same crop in two different scenarios. It's also recently come to light that hemp production is actually a conduit for THC production and is also allowed through CBD flower production into the regulated market. So you could have two farms right next to each other, one highly regulated for odor control and one not regulated for odor control at all, that produces the exact same odors. So it's a little bit of a red herring, the odor issue, particularly when it comes to agricultural crops. There's many crops that that have odor issues. I get that there, has been people moving into agricultural lands, and perhaps there does need to be some modification as far as lot size in order to accommodate that. The other issue that I've seen complained about is lighting, and I think that light can be preserved. There needs to be a mandatory 6-hour dark period. It is also worth noting that pushing cannabis indoors has a massive environmental impact, similar to Bitcoin mining. We should not be using our clean electricity that isn't producing carbon emissions to be growing an agricultural crop because a few of us don't like the odor. These are finite resources that must be protected, and pushing cannabis growers indoors into industrial zones is just going to be further exacerbate the environmental calamity that we are all witnessing today. So I strongly encourage that the Planning Commission take these factors into consideration, and when developing laws surrounding THC cannabis, they realize that the exact same thing is true for hemp cannabis, which is federally legal, and it is probably not within the purview of the Planning Commission or the commissioners to regulate it out of existence. And the contradiction that it'll show when one is highly regulated and the other is not, but they're exactly the same. Thank you for your time.
Right. So now is time for commissioner comment. Commissioner comment. Commissioner Gasmani, go ahead.
I'd like to ask that we get staff to report back to us, if not in this meeting, in a future meeting, on the comment regarding the odor profile of hemp being identical to marijuana. That's the first time I've heard that. And if that's true, then that has a big implication on the work we do here.
Commissioner McClendon.
I just wanted to report to the commission that the public participation work group is continuing to meet. We had sort of a slow August, but we're getting ready to put out a questionnaire to the public, a much more simple questionnaire than we've done to staff and boards and commission members, but starting to think about what kind of information and recommendations we're going to report back to the council. So if you have interest in what we're doing, get in touch with me. I can share information on that.
Any other commissioner comments? Okay, let's move on to approval of minutes. July 22nd meeting.
I move approval.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion or comments, corrections? Seeing none, Tammy, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, did Robert come? Not yet, okay. So it's Commissioner Gasmani?
I abstain. I think I missed that meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayberry?
Yes.
Commissioner McClendon?
Yes.
Commissioner Masseri?
Yes.
Commissioner Barton?
Yes.
Okay, that is 7 yeses, 1 abstaining, so that carries. Oh, yes, we get those.
So next is proposed amendments to the 6-year capital improvement program for Whatcom County. And there will be a public hearing and a work session. And so Matt Ahmet is going to present this. Matt, go ahead, please.
Oh, we lost.
He's up to
No, these are one.
Did we move the marijuana stuff to the beginning? Sorry, I thought Matt was up first.
Matt is up first.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So for the record, my name is Matt Ahmet, representing Planning and Development Services. The Growth Management Act requires counties to incorporate different elements into their comp plans, including a capital facility element. So one component of the county's capital facility element is the 6-year Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, for Whatcom County facilities. And the Whatcom County Comp Plan indicates that the 6-year CIP should be updated every 2 years, and the last comprehensive update was approved by the County Council in 2020. However, the county has identified a public defender office tenant improvement project it wants to complete before the next CIP update in 2022. Therefore, the subject proposal is to amend the CIP by adding the Central Plaza Public Defender Tenant Improvement Project. So the project includes 5 new offices that will provide space for staff and meetings. And we consider this a minor change to the CIP. We're recommending approval. If you have any questions, we try to answer those. And Rusty is also here from the Facilities Department.
Commissioners, any questions? Staff? Commissioner Masseri.
Yeah, I'm just curious what spurred the need for this. Was there a change that occurred, or why is this needed now than it wasn't planned for before?
Rusty, do you want to address that?
Yeah, hi, my name is Rusty Noble. I'm a facilities manager. The court system is back up and running now, and the public defender needs to hire approximately 7 more attorneys, and each one of those attorneys needs an office so they can have confidentiality between themselves. That's what has spurred this.
Commissioner McClendon, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, but you just answered the question.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, I think we should approve this. I used to work in that office, and I've never worked in an office that doesn't have ceilings when you're supposed to have confidentiality with your clients. Literally, there aren't ceilings for attorneys, and they are adding more attorneys. And so frankly, a new location or at least new offices or improved offices would actually attract more people, better talent, that sort of thing. So I think we should approve it.
Okay, we have more questions for Matt or for Rusty. So being that we have no more questions for them at this time, what we need to do is to open a public hearing on this proposal to add construction space for more attorneys for the public defender's office. So I am going to open the public hearing, and I see we have attendees. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? I see Eliza Steele, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi there. I just started driving again, so I'm sorry if it's a little all over the place. But my name is Eliza Steele, and I'm a resident of unincorporated Whatcom County. I just actually wanted to commend the growers that spoke tonight. It's what they're saying is actually enforcing at least a big component of what why I think the marijuana ordinance needs to get revised. It's actually issues around density and zoning of where they're allowed and what sizes are allowed in different areas. You know, unfortunately, even though there's a couple bad actors, they're the ones that are really kind of showing that there's, you know, even though there's only a couple, that they can come in and just still kind of do whatever they want with the code the way that it is. And I've even seen this happen next to a small time grower who actually tries to grow seed that's pure and sell and now can't due to this going on. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. It's density, zoning, you know, looking at those components rather than it just being about all marijuana facilities. I think that it should just go in certain areas if there's certain sizes, and that's looking at lot minimum sizes. How many licenses can be on a lot is a big component of this. At the moment, there is no limitation, so they can just continually keep expanding. So I think with resources becoming pretty precious and finite, it's important to evaluate, you know, how much space are we going to dedicate to a cannabis industry that's rapidly expanding, or do we want to try to save some areas for growing food and farmland? But the growers that spoke, they're farmers. They're not big corporations that come in and hire a bunch of other people to do their work. They're the ones actually doing the work, and they understand. So anyway, I just really want it to be heard that this is for them too. It's not just for the people that live nearby. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Joshua, I see you have your hand up. Do you have comments on the capital facility amendment? Go ahead, Joshua, if you have comments on the capital facility amendment.
Yeah, I wasn't going to comment on that. I was just going to real quickly. I understand the importance of getting with the current thing, but I have both a hemp license and a recreational 502 license and a medical license, and I stink the whole thing up with all of my licenses.
Point of order.
Respectfully. So,
Joshua, we are in a public hearing for capital improvement. Okay, Susan, I can't pronounce your last name there. Winero, do you have comments on the capital improvement amendment?
No, sir, I don't. I was trying to have my hand raised for the marijuana one, but I understand point of order, so I'll withdraw. Thank you. I will send a letter in though.
they
Thank
didn't
you.
give us enough time. They didn't give us enough time, you guys. Come on, we need more public hearing time for the marijuana thing, please.
We will have a public hearing at the time that that there is a proposal. Okay, any comments on capital improvement plan amendment? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Okay, commissioners, what would you like to do?
I have a question for the chair.
Yeah.
Kevin, what were these people who tried to comment regarding marijuana during the public hearing for the capital improvement plan people that had their hands raised and weren't recognized, or are they people who joined later or failed to raise their hands when we had the comment period at the beginning of the meeting?
We answered, or we called on everyone that had their hand up during the open session of public comment.
So basically, there are people who raised their hands later after that we had closed that open
Correct.
session for public comment. Okay, thank you.
Right. Commissioner McClendon.
I move approval of the capital improvement plan amendments as proposed.
I'll second that.
Amendment, I'm sorry, a motion to approve the amendment. We have a second. Is there any discussion?
I'm getting an echo. Can somebody fix that?
No, because we're working.
Oh, I think it might be Matt's phone, and as soon as we're done this section, that should go away. Okay, thank you, Matt.
Is there any discussion on this? Okay, seeing no discussion on this motion and second to adopt the capital facility comprehensive plan amendment. Tammy, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Desmonte,
Aye, yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayberry,
Yes.
Commissioner McClendon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mosseri,
Yes.
Commissioner Barton.
Yes.
That is 8 yeses, that carries.
Okay. So where we're at now is this will be marijuana code amendments, and this is a discussion, policy discussion, and a work session. So we're not taking public comments at this time, but when staff comes back with a proposal, there will be a public hearing before we send anything out of this committee. So Cliff, would you go ahead?
Sure.
I see Commissioner McClendon have her hand up. Let me get her first.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, we do seem to be holding on to our attendees, and there's no reason why we can't take comment later. Maybe after the presentation and after our discussion, if we want to, and there are, I mean, people feel like they still need to say something. We could do that. I don't know if we want to make a decision now so that attendees know that there would be an opportunity or there wouldn't be.
Second.
And we also have the option to call on some of them during discussion. So we can ask the attendees questions during discussion. So what do you propose, Commissioner McClendon?
Can we just make a decision that we would entertain comments at the end? If after all our brilliant discussion, they still feel the need to share more information, that we would take that opportunity to do that.
Commissioners, how do you feel about it? See some thumbs up? Looks like we will do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Mosseri.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, does everybody who's an attendee get another 3 minutes, or what does that look like?
Well, I'm hoping that we answer and respond to their issues and they don't feel the need to talk, but just in case. I mean, I don't think we're going to spend a huge amount of time on this, do you? Maybe an hour and a half at the most.
I would suggest that if we accept public comment, we follow the format of the public comment session with 3 minutes.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay. So Cliff, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. Good to see you all again. Tonight, we're going to address this project a bit differently than usual. So unlike other land use regulations, that there are state laws and rules and regulations about how you do these things, there's no real right way to regulate marijuana production and processing. There's no state codes, no model regulations we can turn to, and certainly very few court cases providing directions yet. So rather than just drafting up regulations, which we usually do, I thought I'd get your input on some policy choices first. And then once I know where you'd like to go, then I can draft the appropriate code language to implement those policies. And if you get through all the questions I posed in the memo tonight and whatever else you might raise, then I'd present a draft code at your next meeting for you to do review and workshop, and then follow that up with a public hearing at your subsequent meeting. That work for everybody? Okay. I'd also like to note that Amy Keenan and Charles Sullivan, two of our current planners and who've processed most of our marijuana facility permits, are here to lend a hand and answer anything that I may not be able to. So they're hanging out in the background there. If you have a question about permits and things like that, they're the go-to folks. We'd prefer not to get into any specifics about any one facility, as this shouldn't be a trial on them, but rather use what they've learned from dealing with those facilities. In your memo, I went through some of the background on how we got here, how we currently regulate marijuana facilities, and how the state licenses them. Do you have any questions about those issues? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the policy issues. And hopefully I've laid these out for you guys well enough to kind of bring you along and answer them. Now, some of the questions may be moot depending on what direction you choose with some of the earlier ones, but we'll just cut right into it here. So one of the questions is, should we prohibit or limit outdoor production? And I kind of laid out three alternatives for doing that. The alternative A is just to prohibit outdoor production in all zones. That's the easiest solution. And odor can be better managed when it's indoor. But as some of the commenters pointed out, it also uses more energy and is more expensive to start up. Alternative B would just be to prohibit outdoor production in certain districts, say the rural area or something like that, where it tends, where it's been the biggest problem. And a third alternative, or C, would be to limit outdoor production facilities by tiers. So I laid out in your memo how big these tiers get. Basically, a 10,000 square foot canopy takes up about an acre in general. And so we could do things like allowing only tier 1 and tier 2 in the rural or some of the other districts, while allowing all tiers in all districts, or allow the larger, more intensive tier 3s as an indoor use only, maybe only in the industrial districts, but if they're indoors elsewhere, I don't know if that matters to you. And we could just say that all tier 3s must be indoor wherever they are, something along those lines. So there's the first question. Please discuss.
Commissioner Hasmani. Go ahead and unmute there, Commissioner Hasmani.
Sorry. So for this discussion, to me, there's two central issues as it impacts the community that kind of should influence how we look at this. And then a third factor, which is intrinsic, that may or may not be relevant, but I thought it'd be worth bringing it up. But so let me first, the thing that really sticks out is the odor issue. And to me, whenever I think about outdoor or indoor, it's really relates to the odor issue. When I think about density, it relates to the odor issue. And when I think about ag or not ag, it relates to the odor issue. I just want to clarify. So that's a big part of how I'm processing this. The second issue are the ecological footprint related issues. And in terms of priority, the bigger ecological footprint issues have to do with pesticides and nutrients that are applied to facilities. And what's unique about these particular kinds of operations is it relates to pesticides and nutrients. And for some of these facilities are near like the Nooksack River, for example. So there's concerns as it relates to that. And then the third thing that has been very much in my thinking on what matters here, and that that could potentially matter, is some math about economic return per acre. So today in Whatcom County, probably the highest high volume crop that's grown are berries. And it's very realistic to produce many $1,000s per acre from berries, $5,000 an acre, very reasonably from blueberries type of production. And Mr. Mayberry, please correct me on this if I'm wrong. When I've looked up marijuana related production, what I'm seeing is like $500,000 per acre. And I'm not so much raising that as a question of the money in and of itself, but when the way that you make money per acre fundamentally changes the way the business runs, and where your priorities are. So it's how it's regulated may also need to be adapted to reflect the economic model of the producers. So I just wanted to bring up that point as well. And when you are making that kind of money per acre, then you're perhaps willing to make different decisions, set different priorities on how you use resources. So I just wanted to bring those things up. And I didn't exactly answer your question, Cliff, but I will endeavor to say that I don't think there should be an outright ban on outdoor. I think there should be we should explore if there's some way to factor odor into the permitting process. And it could be that that's impossible. And that's something I'd like to hear from you.
From what I understand, controlling the odor from outdoor production, and that means even in greenhouses, because greenhouses open their windows and roofs and everything, and the odor escapes that way, is basically impossible. So
Commissioner Hanson.
Well, I would like to give a response to Cliff's question, but I want to ask John a question. When there's an odor from cow manure, is that generally just when it's spread during the seasons where you spread it on the growing plants, or do people complain about cow manure all year round from the lagoons?
I'm not a dairy farmer, but
Yeah.
generally when it's being spread, or if a lagoon is being agitated to get it ready to spread.
Thanks. I know you're not a.
I have to speak some.
I've gone by your berry field, so it's great. Fundamentally, I consider this as an agricultural activity, particularly grown outside, even though the state laws want to label it differently. And I want to be supportive of agriculture. And I'm generally more supportive of agriculture than I am of people wanting to live in rural areas. So
This guy's smart.
So I would like to see
more support of agriculture than people living in rural areas. That's
You're
what.
speaking.
Wait a second. Why is someone talking when I'm supposed to be talking? Okay. So I think I would be supportive in general of a combination of alternative B and C, and that is trying to cite these as much as possible into ag and forestry and rural forestry zones as much as possible, and then perhaps having opportunity for smaller operations in terms of tier 1, 2, and 3 in some of the more heavily populated areas. So that, I guess, that's what I would tend to support, is going ahead and limiting the size per the zone.
Commissioner McClendon.
I have a question for whoever can answer it. The odor issue, are we talking about year-round continuous, or is this cyclical based on the maturity of the crop?
From what I understand, it just occurs like when they're getting ready to bud and all that kind of stuff. So it's not when they're young plants or anything. It's when they're getting ripe. And from what the other staff told me, is that when some of these, especially the smaller ones, started out, they generally get one crop a year, but because they're bettering their the way they grow and their techniques and all that, they're getting up to 3 grows a year. So it's kind of 3 cycles that there might be odor for a month or 2.
Okay.
It used to be a smaller time frame, but now it's getting more and more.
Kind of reminds me, I remember talking to somebody who grew up in Yakima who just couldn't stand the smell of hops, which can be fairly strong during harvest season. But yeah, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lund.
I'm wondering if staff can share if the majority of the odor complaints that the county's received, if they fall into like tier 3 as defined by the Liquor Cannabis Board, or if they are kind of evenly distributed amongst the sizes of the operations.
Now I'm going to ask either Amy or Charles to chime in on that because they know the details of those better.
So we have had, I'm Charles.
Go ahead.
We have had odor complaints on tier 3s, tier 1s, and I believe a tier 2. If you were to look at the volume of odor complaints, it's clearly higher in tier 3 outdoors than any other tier indoors. Was there any other question, or does that answer your question?
That's great. Thank you, Charles.
I would also like to say that what Cliff said earlier about the amount of crops grown in a year, he is correct in that the original marijuana code, I think, was devised thinking that there would be one crop, that the odor would be mitigated on outdoor crops based on time and duration. So if in a true outdoor scenario, where you're only using the sun and no external lighting sources to control the light cycle, then you would only get odors from roughly, October or August 15th to October 15th, right? When those plants start to flower, as the light cycles decline, they flower. And There are some changes, though, that manipulation has always been a factor. Light cycle manipulation has always been a factor in growing marijuana, whether legal or illegal. And that doesn't change when it's done outside if we look at a greenhouse as outdoor grows as we presently do. So when you can manipulate the light cycle by either light or the absence of light, then you can get multiple crops or flowering cycles within a normal year. And certainly if you add light, then it can almost be a year round if we view those hoop houses or greenhouses as an outdoor grow, which the current definition does. The last part of that big picture is that there is a new strain of marijuana, I guess, called autoflower marijuana, that no longer do you have to manipulate the light cycles in order to get the plant to flower. So you can do that based on a time. So there are these autoflowers that now can flower, say, in 90 days. And that's about the middle, I think, 90 to 100 days from when you plant the seed to when they are done. And so in that time frame, from what I understand, it's about 2 months of flowering. That allows for, without manipulating the light cycles, possibly 3 or even 4 different flowering cycles within a normal summer high light season. So those are some things that there are some problems with those autoflowers, but that can change, with the increase in technology and genetics as genetics change. So there is a moving target there, I think, with the autoflowering, and also to understand that as we go through this process, the manipulation of light cycles is how you make these plants flower. The flowering is what makes the odor. Odors are the greatest issue. And so the original thought from my understanding, and I was not a part of it, but my understanding is this original code was put into place for outdoor marijuana grows, the idea was that it was similar to cow manure. You're going to be limited by time and duration. Duration, you can only spread manure from the end of the wet season to the wet season again, right? We have regulations in place. In this case, marijuana itself, if the sun is what creates the flowering cycle, you can only get 1 a year. And when you manipulate it with greenhouses, that changes. And so that's separate. That's a little different than, say, spreading cow manure. So there's some different things going on there. And so when we go through the different options, that's why I bring this up. I think we need to think not only how the industry actually runs by manipulating light cycles, but also we may want to look into the future with regards to where the industry is going potentially with autoflower plants. There's only a few growers in Washington State that use the autoflowers. There's one in the Meadow Valley that's done really well, from what I understand. But those are other factors in play. So I just wanted to make sure we understood, as we move forward, that those are really how you grow the plant is going to really drive the impacts.
Thank you, Charles. And by the way, if you hear me say something that's wrong, or if you want to add to it, please feel free to chime in. Same with you, Amy.
Commissioner Hampton. Yeah, thank you, Charles. That was extremely informative and a little bit eyebrow raising to hear about the developments in the plant technology. I think maybe we have a mistake to consider greenhouses as outdoor grows. And I would wonder if we might have a separate category, because someone who truly was growing outdoors, even if they used the new genetics for quicker budding, in Whatcom County, there's still a very short season in which they'd be able to get plants to bud. So I'm wondering if we could create an ordinance that makes a true distinction between those two types of growing, and give greater latitude to people who are actually growing outdoors and have tighter restrictions on people using greenhouses.
Commissioner Desmond.
I had a question for staff and raised it earlier, and that is that regarding hemp and hemp-related practices, are there any hemp growers in Whatcom County? Have we gotten any odor-related complaints on hemp growers? Have we? Is the practice around growing hemp allow the hemp to also get to the same level of odor that outdoor marijuana growers are producing?
Looks like you have something to say, Charles. Go for it.
I don't believe I've heard, and I haven't checked into this. I have not heard of a hemp complaint yet. I have looked into the fact that there are licensed hemp growers. Whether or not they actually grow hemp, I do not know. Hemp is an agricultural product, and therefore in the R zone and the ag zone, and maybe another zone or two, outright permitted, and so that we wouldn't get any special permit and wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah, and so when you're using hemp as an agricultural product for fiber or nutrient type products, you're not looking at the same return per acre. But also, I'm curious, do you grow the plant at the same stage when you're growing it as hemp, as opposed to when you're growing for the purpose of producing, the recreational or pharmaceutical drug?
That would be a really good question to ask a hemp grower. I'm not.
So, okay,
I'm not
so
on it.
something we need to get.
We can get you that answer, I think. I mean, we can look, and the hemp growers are licensed by the state, and we could figure out who they are and make a phone call.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Commissioner Lund.
To answer Cliff's question that he posited for us here, I guess my inclination is to be interested in a staff proposal that would limit size by zone using the LCB tier status. And then we've kind of segued a little bit into question 2, and I would just echo Commissioner Hansen's. Maybe we seek to better define truly indoor, and then there's a greenhouse kind of hoop house category and outdoor. Perhaps there's 3 different categories. I'm interested in giving more depth. We heard from several very small scale outdoor operations tonight. I personally feel like in favor of supporting their operations because they're less resource intensive. They seem to fit with the culture of small independent agriculture in our county. They seem to have less impact on odor and are just kind of naturally limited on like the grow ops that they can do in a season. So anyways, that maybe 3 statuses for defining facilities.
Commissioner Hansen.
I'm not an expert on this, but I've had previous experience growing that plant. And when you grow it for bud, you take practices that limit the fiber growth and encourages the bud growth. And for fiber, I would thereby imagine that the whole idea is to keep it from budding, because when it buds, then it'll stop doing vegetative growth other than producing those buds. So I would tend to think there would be a real distinction that way from my own personal illicit experience.
And thank you. That's what I thought as well. That's why I was startled by the comments, by the public comment.
Commissioner McGlindan.
I want to echo Commissioner Hansen and Commissioner Lund's comments about identifying outdoor grow as truly outdoors where you rely on the sun. I think that's the I mean, obviously, apparently that sounds like that was the original intent of the regulations that would mitigate the odor to a narrower part of the growing season. I also feel strongly that, as a gardener, I'm always trying to push the boundaries of the growing season, but that's really the most efficient way to grow things, and I think we need to be encouraging that if I'm not even sure I care whether we limit it to a particular size, if tier 1, 2, or 3, but that we would be using a definition of outdoor was literally without artificial light, so that they were dependent upon the growing season to bring the crop into flower. So, I'm not sure how, maybe as Commissioner Lund said, that kind of gets into question 2, but I'll let Cliff figure out how to mush that together.
Commissioner Mayberry.
It would be really good to get into language that it's limited to one cycle. Because with auto flowering, or we call them day neutrals in strawberries, you could have a situation where you have a separate nursery in a greenhouse, staging plants, bringing them out constantly, especially with pots. It's done in Mexico, typically more in areas that have constant daylight, but there'd definitely be ways around it if it wasn't limited to one cycle.
Commissioner Nesmani.
Thank you, Commissioner Mayor. That's very helpful. I also wanted to suggest some language to support the vein that Commissioner Lund, Hanson, and McClendon were talking about, and that would be indoor, strictly outdoor, and then controlled environment, which greenhouse would be one, and lighting, daylighting, electric daylighting would also be put in the same category as greenhouses, perhaps.
I'll speak for a moment here. Cliff, Chelan County went through this process in 2018. What do you see in their code? Or have you had a chance to look at that?
I have not seen theirs. I went through lots of them, but Chelan's not one of them I did. So,
yeah, they eliminated most of their outdoor grow, and it was in the same odor issue. And, so if you can look at that, that would be great to see. And then I did want to comment about light, because I had the opportunity going down Bay Road to go by the one that is there just east of the railroad tracks. And my wife and I were driving along there one evening, and it was dark, and I actually thought there was a house fire in the woods. The light was incredibly bright, and I pulled up, I stopped, I got out with a camera, and when I got out at the end of the driveway, all of a sudden they slipped the light level way down. It went to far less than half of what it had been. It was incredibly bright, and I did think that there was a fire back there in the woods. And so I'd like to see us really take a look at the light level that's necessary versus the light level that maybe somebody wants to try out.
and a solution to that is having blackout shades.
And that might be a good solution. Charles, go ahead.
So I spoke with that grower today, yesterday maybe, because I permitted his site, and he did get light complaints historically, and we asked him to use a blackout shade, and he indicated to me today, and I only say this because it's a public record, and to be fair to everyone, that he did have a blackout shade, and that's what he was going to use from here on out, even though the existing code does not require that, to be quite clear. So both those things. One, the existing code doesn't require a blackout shade, and so light is an issue, and you noted that. And two, that particular grower has dealt with that issue when we asked him to outside of code requirements.
Have other questions for Cliff or staff or recommendation? Commissioner McClendon.
Well, we got a little off the current topic of questions, but I do want to pursue the light issue, because I know that in Bellingham they have regulations for light pollution. Do we have anything in the county?
Not that I know of.
I mean, it's an incredible waste of energy if you're lighting the sky. That's kind of pointless.
It is pointless. We have in the ADM criteria for those permits that require an ADM administrative approval or conditional use, the staff has to determine that the activity won't have impacts offsite. In dealing with glare is one of them. That's been difficult historically because our code doesn't forbid the outdoor growing, and we view hoop houses and greenhouse structures as outdoor. So that is sort of a more than wiggle room, I think, that we have to answer the question, and based on the information in front of us, we answer the question, we do the best we can, and it turns out that it can be something far different than what we thought it was.
So I'm asking if there's general regulations about light pollution. I mean, somebody could just put up a giant sign that just drives their neighbors crazy too. I mean, we have sign regulations, and I assume that that the amount of illumination is related to that, but there's nothing that, I mean, maybe we need some kind of general ordinance about, that can be applied to whatever we hadn't thought of, because if it's not a sign, maybe it's just a giant yard light that's incredibly too bright.
And what you're talking about is more of a nuisance code rather than a land use code, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. The county does have one of its titles is it's where all the nuisance stuff is, but I haven't read it, so
okay,
there might be something in there.
All right, thank you.
I guess I'm just sitting here. I'm not sure how to really phrase this, but if we're looking at differentiating greenhouses, which are currently considered outdoor operations, which we know are using artificial light to promote flowering. And there's been some conversation about differentiating that from outdoor, but that we would want to limit outdoor, which I strongly favor what Commissioner Mayberry said about putting in some language about one growth cycle. Maybe we would want to do that for greenhouses and hoop houses or other structures that are currently outdoor, but are using artificial light. Because if we don't limit them also to one growth cycle, then we're naturally pushing a whole group to that. And that seems to be a really resource intensive. I'm not so sure we want to nudge growers in that direction. I guess I would be in favor of putting the same limits on outdoor as we would in this other category. Even if there's mitigation with blackout shades possible, it just seems like an incredibly unsustainable crop from an energy perspective that we would be kind of favoring through this these code choices. So just food for thought.
I will ask another question, and I got this question. I almost talked about this in commissioner comments, but one of my closest friends is a retired police chief, and he's really not in favor of marijuana. But his oldest son is one of the most desired grow masters in the state of Washington. And so Tom, he's not really a marijuana fan, but he's very proud of his son. And Tom actually started explaining to me the grow process and some of the things that we were getting here. I was relating to him, and my son would tell you that that's not the most efficient. And so a question I have for the industry, maybe you can bring that to us. What power needs do you need? What lighting needs do you need to function year round? We kind of did this with our Cherry Point, where we started asking both sides of what's going on and talking to them. So what does the industry need? Is the one I saw where I thought the woods were on fire, or there was a house fire back in the woods, is that excessive? Is that the norm? Because when we pulled up and stopped, I went, man, are we on camera? They just turned the lights way down. So maybe we should find out what their needs are too, as opposed to wants or practices. Just wanted. Commissioner Mayberry.
Yeah, I just think we should be careful mixing different things in with this. We're talking about marijuana right now, and we don't have anyone in the participants that are part of the other greenhouse operations. So just as from what I know of the greenhouses in our area, they're not being used as a replacement for outdoor production. They're primarily for first generation stock, which you do need. You need a closed environment to control viruses and pathogens, and so they need to be started in a greenhouse, both from tissue culture as well as grow out. So it's not quite the same thing. We don't have hot houses like they do in Canada, as far as I know, growing commercial goods or retail goods outside of maybe flowers, but that's kind of the same deal. They wouldn't survive outdoors in the tiny plant part of their lives. So I think we should probably leave that for a different discussion.
Any more questions or information for Cliff? Cliff, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Me? Oh.
Yeah. Anything else you want to ask the commissioner? Oh, there we go. Commissioner McClendon, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering if Cliff feels like he's got enough to go on for at least question one, if not two.
Well, I was just going to say, let me kind of what it seemed to lead to, and I think Commissioner Lund said it most succinctly, is limit the tiers by zone. So let the bigger tiers be in the less residential areas, and the smaller tiers continue to allow in some of the, the rural zone, et cetera. But better define indoor versus outdoor, and where do greenhouses fit and hoop houses, or somebody say maybe call them a controlled environment. That's kind of the gist of the bottom line of what I heard here. And but I don't know if all commissioners agree or not. So, given no other direction, that's what I'd prepare the code off of.
Okay, and I am not seeing any hands come up. Would you like to go ahead and open up for public comments. Ready for that, Commissioner? Commissioner Desmond.
By the way, I'm working on my light. Right now it's kind of dramatic. So sorry, but I can't get the right lighting in my room right now. But anyway, I wanted to ask Cliff if there's other questions you want us to address tonight first.
Well, I'd like to get all through all 9 of them and just make sure everybody's on the same page. 2, we started getting into a little bit, and it's basically, should we better define outdoor versus indoor production? I thought that we'd just define them in such a way that greenhouses and hoop houses are considered outdoor production. I'll have to think about whether having a 3rd category helps us in any way. But I think in a minimum, we ought to somehow say that, indoor is completely indoor, outdoor is completely outdoor, and the greenhouses, whether they fall into a 3rd category or we define them as outdoor, I don't know yet. Anybody have anything to say about that? Mr. Chair, I think Charles has his hand up for a staff comment.
Okay, the only issue with that definition where we don't allow for hoop houses or any indoor growing of the plants through the cold and less light season is that those growers that are dependent upon their genetics to carry over to the next year in the form of clones. And I think Mr. Mayberry was getting to this, clearly the farmer of the group. They can't get through that season unless they create seeds. So there's a way you can create seeds chemically, but it's expensive. There's a way you create seeds with male plants, but it's risky because you could then pollinate all your plants. So I understand that perspective of segregating the two, because hoop houses have caused quite a bit of problems. But I think if we go down that road, that if we're going to have outdoor grows at all, outdoor grows are dependent upon getting genetics through the cold and low light seasons. And however that happened, without that, there is no outdoor grows, which we could just out and out ban new outdoor grows, and that's fine too. I mean, I don't care, but I think we just need to understand that from the industry's perspective, I think that they would tell you that there needs to be some way to carry those genetics through those cold and low light periods.
Commissioner McClendon.
I think I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Commissioner Hampton.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. And I think Charles caught the clarification is counting hoop houses and greenhouses as basically either a third category or as indoor grows. And I would believe that someone could craft an ordinance that would allow for non-budding vegetative clones and young plants to be grown indoors in preparation for them being taken to bud and harvest outdoors. I would imagine that could be written up.
So Cliff kind of asked this. Question 3 talks about types of use or permits. Does anybody have thoughts on that? Just looking at this list here. Or number 4 is, should we limit the number of LCB licenses per lot in some of the zones here? We talked a little bit about 5, and we talked about 6, which is odor. That 7 is setbacks and separation requirements. And then 8 is should we, and Cliff gives some good illustrations here of setbacks. But 8 is should we limit processing facilities that use hazardous materials to the industrial district. And then 9 is how should we handle any facilities that become non-conforming to changes in regulations. And 10 is how do you determine if offsite odor impacts rise to the level of a public nuisance? And I know everybody read these, but these were the specific Cliff asked if we could answer more of these questions.
Okay, do we want to tackle 3? All right, so what types of permits do we think? I provided you a little table of what staff came up with as to what we think it ought to be. But it's up for discussion.
I'm seeing a lot of people reading here. But Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I actually did read this, and I'm somewhat comfortable with the chart you put out there. And I think if we had the 3 distinctions rather than the 2 distinctions, it could be useful. And I know you didn't have an opportunity to craft it in that fashion, but I guess that's what I would ask, is that we resolve 2 and then revise that chart in light of 3 different definitions.
Yeah, and in that chart, I guess I was considering basically that we would define greenhouses and hoop houses as being indoors. Because it seemed that that's where we were headed, long before we even met tonight.
Commissioner McClendon.
Can you remind me again what, or maybe you have it here, what kind of public notice is required for the different categories, the CUP and the administrative?
So the public notice for both the ADM and the CUP is exactly the same. For those within an urban growth area, which I don't think is the case, it's going to be, for the most of these, or it's going to be a 300 foot from the edge of the property boundary notice. And then for the ones outside of UGA, which is the majority of the ones that are in the ag or the R zone, although there is ag zone, for instance, right outside Linden city limits, that might not be in a UGA. Those are 1,000. So those are the noticing requirements. It also goes into the Herald, which is our paper of record. The difference with noticing between a CUP and an ADM is that the conditional use permit goes before the hearing examiner, who makes a determination, and it is then noticed a second time, not only to the Herald, but also to any parties of record that commented. Whereas with the ADM, if we go down that permit road, if we have an aggrieved party that commented, then they can appeal to the hearing examiner. Whereas the conditional use permit immediately goes to the hearing examiner. That's where the choice is made. So from the staff's perspective, the ADM makes the staff member make the choice whether it complies with county code, and the conditional use permit just requires staff to make a determination as to, or a recommendation, I guess, to the hearing examiner, who actually makes the final determination. And so that's the difference in those permits with regards to noticing and somewhat process.
And
though I
anything
should-
permitted, there's no notice.
Yeah, that's right. Outright permitted is a building permit. We do not notice building permits.
Okay.
And I should note that both the hearing examiner and the staff have to make the decision based on the same criteria, what's found in the code. We often hear that, citizens believe that staff doesn't listen to them, but we do. But we can only really act on the comments that get to a piece of the code that says, yes, you can do this, or no, you can't do this.
Commissioner Masseri.
Yeah, I think this chart's a pretty good starting point, but I wonder if it makes sense to dive into it a little bit deeper once we start looking at what we're allowing where, because if we're allowing bigger or more obtrusive operations in areas that maybe are less suited to it, I would think that a stricter permitting process on that would make more sense than something, if a smaller thing in an area that it's less of an issue to people.
So maybe the tier 1s are an ADM, and maybe tier 2s, but tier 3s be a CUP wherever they are, something like that.
Potentially.
Well, for me to draft code that reaches all, covers all potentials is pretty damn hard.
Well, that my point was maybe we hold off on going too deep into that until we know what code we're kind of going for, and then deciding what level of permit it reaches. Is that, I don't know. So I'm trying to be simpler on it, but maybe not.
But that's all I'm asking tonight is you guys give me direction. Tell me what you want, and then we'll draft that code. Okay. One of the questions is, should we limit the number of LCB licenses per lot in some of the districts, and or require separation between producers? Limiting the licenses, I saw that other jurisdictions do that. The separation between producers was a comment I think we got from one of the people who wrote letters. And frankly, we think that it might be a good idea to limit it to one production, one processing license per lot, so that you don't get somebody buying up a whole bunch and growing 40 acres a pod or something.
I'm seeing a few nods there, Cliff. Oh.
Yeah, I saw at least one head nod.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. The lighting issue, again, you've sort of talked about this a little bit. But we think, as long as, if you're indoors, it's not an issue. I mean, completely indoors. If we define greenhouses and hoop houses as being indoors, then we think that there should be blackout shades. Somebody, I think, commented that you could limit it, have a blackout time period during the night, 6 hours, but they didn't say what time period that would be. I don't know. So, because it can be an issue, as your chair has pointed out.
Commissioner McClendon has a comment.
I think the comment about the 6 hours is that they are daylight sensitive, clearly, because that's what we're being told, is that it brings it into bud because of the length of the day. And so you can't just have the lights on all the time. You have to have a dark period. A lot of plants are like that. Poinsettias, onions.
Most plants, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Ms. McClendon, that's true and not true. The flowering stage requires a limited light phase to switch the hormones in the plant and make it bud. The vegetative stage, which is that portion of time that they want to carry those plants through the winter, the cold and low light periods, can be 24 hours a day. And so it's both those things. And blackout shades, in a similar vein, blackout shades can be used not only for lighting, to black out lighting within the greenhouse, But in an odd turn of events, if you had a scenario, you could have a scenario where somebody wants to cover the greenhouse for a portion of time to start the flowering cycle earlier and actually potentially reduce, oddly, the amount of impact due to smell by getting those plants to finish flowering earlier by limiting the amount of light that those plants get. And so therefore not pushing that flowering phase into the fall and allowing for maybe moisture and some and loss. This is all I learned from talking to different growers. And so it's all really, nothing sort of goes in one direction all the time, right? It's not all that simple where you think, oh, that's why they do it this way. I've learned that actually sometimes they are in 24-hour light cycles, and that's best. And sometimes also they are in less than 20, they're limiting the light. So it can go both ways, which makes this a little more vexing.
Why don't you continue there, Cliff?
Okay, I think we've kind of covered the odor issue in a roundabout way because it is the biggest issue, really. Smaller ones in the more residential areas, more intensive ones be indoor or in our industrial or less residential districts. And then we do have some language for the indoor stuff regarding the ventilation and odor control systems. So we can insert that for those indoor grows. But again, if we're going to allow outdoor, especially large ones, then there's no stopping that.
Just as you can hold for a moment.
Sure.
Well, I tend to think that if we make sure that the hoop houses are treated as greenhouses, we might be able to require odor control for them as like in the indoor. I mean, the traditional indoor, and that might put a limit on the number of hoop houses, like the cheap way to get around, because I think we would rather have people spend the money to minimize the nuisance rather than just find the cheapest way to grow something. And I am in favor of the blackout shades as well.
From what I understand, even the hoop houses and greenhouses, they open those up during the day. So then you can't really control that odor, right?
Okay, yeah, I got that. So that's why they should be more highly regulated if they can't control the odor, and they will be growing several crops a year.
Right. What about the limiting processing facilities use hazardous materials to the industrial district? I don't think this is really an issue. I think you can't get Fireflow to use these, out in the rural districts anyway. We think it's a good idea. Thumbs up from the Planning Commission. Okay. And then the issue about non-conforming issues, or your non-conforming ones, because if you change the rules now, all the ones that are out there, really, many of them would become non-conforming, and under our very lenient rules in Whatcom County about non-conforming rules, they could expand, they could add on, they could do all kinds of things. We're suggesting that we insert some language that those portions of our non-conforming regulations don't apply to these uses. Does that make sense to the commission?
Can you restate that, Cliff, and then we'll move on. I see Commissioner Lund has a comment too. So if you could restate that.
Repeat it?
Yeah, go ahead and restate that.
Okay. The question is, how should we handle any facilities that become non-conforming due to the changes in these regulations? And as you all know, our non-conforming regulations are very lenient. We allow somebody to rebuild, we allow somebody to expand, we allow people to change to another non-conforming use for some silly reason. And we are suggesting when it comes to these, so say you decided to, and the council agreed to not allow outdoor production anywhere, but we have all these outdoor producers right now. Those would theoretically all become non-conforming, and under our very liberal non-conforming rules, could continue, could expand, could change to something else like an auto wrecking yard. I'm suggesting that in our language, we have some, in our code, we have some language that excludes these types of facilities from those portions of the non-conforming regulations, so that people would have to, they'd be able to continue to do what they're doing, but they couldn't expand. And if they went out of business, you know, for, I think it's 18 months or something, Charles, or a year, then you can't continue that. But we would like things to change over to be more of the indoor, more of the odor controlled, more of the light controlled uses rather than the way it is now.
Charles, do you want to add on to what you have to say there?
I wanted to make sure that Cliff got that completely right, and I think he did. This is sort of a big issue if you're going to make new rules, because our non-conforming code is, or the CUP code with regards to non-conformance is so liberal that we would actually give sort of preferential treatment to things that we just created non-conformity out of, so they could still expand. You know, the one place in the code that we don't allow this is actually adult entertainment. So, you know, where you can't use that non-conforming CUP language. And I think that there's a good reason for that. And in this case, if we then limited outdoor grows or any grows and then said, oh, except for those that are already here, you can expand, we wouldn't deal with the issues that we already have.
And Commissioner Lund, you had your hand up, and I think you put it down, but okay, thank you. Commissioner McClendon.
Yeah, I think you answered my questions. I would agree that we should not be applying the non-conforming code to this.
Okay. All right, and the last question I had, and this came from, you know, the existing language talks about, you know, some of the impacts not rising to a level of being a public nuisance. We use that term throughout the zoning code. I went to look up the definition of public nuisance in our code, and we have none. I'm suggesting that we add a definition of public nuisance to our zoning code, so that we can use not only for this, but lots of other things. So if the PC is good with that.
Commissioner Mayberry.
I'd be fine looking at that, but I'd be really careful about what it ends up saying, because anyone can get a bunch of people together and decide they don't like something.
I agree.
Oh, that's all I gotta say.
Okay.
Commissioner Lund.
I had a question for staff about, it was in a letter that was submitted for public comment from attorneys here in Bellingham. I believe it was Wolf and Lee, or Brownlee and Lee. I can't remember the name of the attorney's office. It came in the other day. And they spoke a little bit to this about one potential way to handle it would be to, on top of Liquor Control Board licenses, do Whatcom County business licenses as an enforcement tool. And I just wanted to hear your response to that comment.
My response is we don't require business license. We don't have them in this county. I don't know why they're one of the best ways to do enforcement, but also to double check that you're getting all the taxes you're owed and all that kind of stuff. So that would be something that the commission would have to raise with the council if you wanted to look into that.
I just want to wish Cliff good luck in defining a public nuisance.
It'll be none of you. All right, well, I think I got some direction. Tomorrow and Monday, I'll do my best to try to pull some of this together, but my guess is there will continue to be discussion. So I'm not going to schedule a public hearing until I know you guys are ready to go forth on this.
All right, so are we ready to hear from more of the public?
I have a,
I see Commissioner this month.
so now that we've gone through these 10, I have a, I don't know if it's item number 11 or, but anyway, I've it came up in the discussion and it's also now related to this point about business license. Is it feasible to create a category as it relates to permitting and land use for a craft operation? Is that something that can be done? That would basically allow experimental growers or very small scale growers to advance the state of the art, a research facility that's exploring new strains, so on and so forth, for the these folks are operating for very specialized use and for the advancement of the industry. Would that be something that could be addressed?
Possibly, but not within the next 2 days, which is the time I have to get my next memo out to you guys.
Yeah, I understand, but I just wanted to raise the issue, and maybe in the next 2 days you could think about how that could be addressed, and maybe subsequently and concurrently, or so on and so forth.
Yeah. I'd need to know more about what would define a craft grower, and not from you. I'd have to talk to some experts.
Yeah, we are doing a public comment, so some of the folks who spoke about that may have some thoughts on that subject.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Commissioner Hampton.
Well, I resonated with the comments from the public earlier, perhaps Ms. Rainbow, and about the lack of enforcement. And of course, the logic of that is that, well, why even have regulations? Because we're not going to enforce them. So I imagine that we choose which regulations we enforce and where we put money to enforce. And so I'm in favor of a license. Maybe it's a way to do some groundbreaking if it's only for pot growers required a license, but a license and a fee adequate to provide for enforcement and for monitoring compliance with the provisions that these entities are supposed to be operating under.
I think that's a good idea. However, any of those types of licenses would not fall under the land use code, which is your purview. It would fall under other titles, and you really would need to get the council and the county exec and the finance folks all involved in that discussion.
Well, just let's keep the idea alive, because we did hear from the public, and these operations should pay for their own enforcement and monitoring. That's particularly the high end ones.
Yeah.
Commissioner McClendon.
I just wanted to clarify Commissioner Deshmani's comments about the craft grower. We wouldn't do anything about that unless the state created that as a category, would we? I mean, we can't just tell people they can do other things. with marijuana.
May I address that, Chair?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so I was just thinking that perhaps it could be coupled with how business licenses are done. It could be a special craft license as opposed to, a commercial operation.
Okay, but I don't think the state allows that. Anyway,
I don't know that they disallow it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in the state law that disallows how the county issues business licenses.
But we don't issue business licenses, Commissioner.
But yeah,
and
I
we
mean-
don't, we
Yeah,
don't
right.
issue permits to grow marijuana either. The state does.
Right, we just issue permits for them to use the land a certain way.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Commissioner Lund.
I was just going to say, if the commission feels like licensing may be an effective tool for regulating this industry, then we can still advance that notion to council for their consideration. So
I'd actually start with the county exec first.
thanks, Cliff.
Commissioner Masseri.
Yeah, with all that we're discussing here, I mean, this is going to have as large or of an impact as Cherry Point did on the industry's Cherry Point discussion it did out there. And I appreciate the couple people that have operations that have come here, but I think we need to do real thorough outreach to the industry and get their input. We're talking about something that's really going to affect their businesses and their livelihoods and the future of them. So I don't know how best to get that out, but I think we need to make sure that we get input, a good amount of input from a variety of the operators.
So we do have the addresses and names and addresses of all the licensees. That's where that map that I provided you came from the state license list and then pared down to Whatcom County. Theoretically, we could send out flyers, or mailers and let people know. However, what I'm concerned about now is if you wanted to do something like that and organize a meeting with all these people, I don't know that your next meeting would be the best one to do that at. It might need to be a month or so off. So I'll have to talk to Mark about that because he likes to keep to this schedule he produces.
Do you have any more for us there? Do you have any more for us, Cliff?
Oh, sorry, no, I was taking a note. I do not.
Okay, commissioners, do you want to hear from the public now? Okay. So attendees, we are going to hear from you. And we will just do it as an extension of our open session for public comment. And what we did over here is look at the list. And so what I see is Joshua Rutherford is first up there on the list. So go ahead, Joshua.
Hey guys, I really do appreciate everyone's openness to try to work this through. Each one of you, I've heard your hearts in this. You heard me speak earlier. There's a lot to cover. I won't be able to do it in my comment period. I am in contact with Charles, and I would be more than happy to provide my services. I will let you guys know I'm an expert in the industry. I here am a breeder. Like I kind of meet the definition of what Natalie was talking about. I'm a breeding genetics, and on that note, we no one can really bring cannabis to fruition in full term in Whatcom County, and that's real. And you guys don't really understand that. We can only do it in covered greenhouses with light deprivation, and there's tons of techniques. You guys would have a hard time, honestly, like coming up with the code to stop us. And I don't mean to, I'm not saying that antagonistically. I'm just kind of saying like we're a really creative farming community. But I am a craft grower. I really just grow for breeding and genetics, and to try to find genetics that will work outdoors in this area, because really at 49 degrees north, we are higher than any place in the United States, period. I guess, there's a lot of questions to be answered. I'm not gonna remember them all. Shoot, I'm forgetting a lot of the comments, but I do think that if you worked on the craft stuff and thought about that, you'd have a lot of support from us. I think that if you polled us, we'd respond rapidly. We do that. I actually put on a conference that is tours the United States, and I put on education on how to grow regeneratively and to speak to the environmental factors. My conference is called the Science of Regenerative Organic Cannabis Cultivation Conference. You can look it up. I'm all over the place. And really, the most sustainable way to grow a plant, period, is to grow it to close to where people consume it. And in order to do that, you have to use a little bit of energy. And I'm the person the dude that talked about seeing my operation lit up. That's me. And to break it down, in my greenhouse, my 30 by 96 greenhouse, I have what we call in the industry 112 light space, which is a light space is 16 square feet. So that's 1,800 square feet roughly that I produce in my 30 by 96 greenhouse. And I use supplemental lighting. I use 36 1,000 watt lights. If this was an indoor grow, I would use 118 1,000 watt lights. I would also need cooling capacity for each one of those, which equates to each light is half of a ton of cooling capacity. So if you guys could follow me and figure out that math, that's a ton of energy. It's huge. And if you ask us to go indoors and force this community indoors, it is the biggest environmental impact. We can't grow outdoors here sustainably. It doesn't work in our environment, but with some of this supplementation, we can do it. And there's a lot of discussion to be had, and I'm happy to talk it through. There's not enough time in this, but to break it all down. But that's actually what I do in my conferences. I teach people how to do this. And I would be happy to give a fair amount of time to working with any of the county on this.
Thank you. Susan Wendell, we accidentally lowered your hand, but would you go ahead, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your discussion this evening. It's very appreciative. The couple of things that do come up is you've definitely looking at odor control. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. We appreciate that you're looking at the lighting. We understand the sustainable needs for lighting. And it sounds like Joshua has some good information for you. As a resident in a rural area, the greenhouse lighting that is not canopied is unbelievable. You lose all of your night sky. You can't see the roads. It's just incredible. So there has to be some sort of darkening. The biggest thing that we see is that there just needs to be some sort of a uniform protection for rural landowners that currently exists there, so that the odor that is emanated from these farms doesn't just completely wipe out our lifestyles. Most of us enjoy evenings out, and when these crops are in full harvest, the smell is just unbelievable. We have 3 marijuana farms located within 3 miles with a total canopy of, on 2 that are adjacent, of over 40,000. We have another one down the road that is just keeps expanding, and the odor in that area is just tremendous. So it's changing our lifestyles as well. Whether you support rural landowners or not, which kind of was a surprise to me. No one should be out in a rural area. We are farmers too, and we do food production, and we do hay production, and we have animals. So I would like to hear some sort of protection and some sort of enforcement directed to protect existing landowners, and not just let this become a mecca of marijuana, which I don't know. Water resources are a concern, crops are a concern, food is a concern, and we're supporting a drug. So to me, this is a little bit difficult to stomach. So if you could just help us that are rural landowners, we would really appreciate it and not be completely left out of this as you support business and industry. We also support the sustainable farms of marijuana. Absolutely. It's the large tier 3 multi-million-dollar operations that have no business in Whatcom County. Thank you.
Mark Ambler, go ahead.
Hi, mic check.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, yeah, about the light thing. I grow cannabis. Again, my name is Mark Ambler. I'm a resident, and I'm a tier 1 farmer that grows in shade cloth structures. So, next door to us, we have a flower nursery that sells to Home Depot, the hanging flower baskets. And when they're trying to get their plants to flower, they have their lights on at night. So if they keep their lights on, but we have to turn ours off, that's not fair. And then the odor thing, the CBD thing is real. Like if you go to a store and you buy CBD flower and you buy regular flower, and take it to somebody, they will not be able to tell you the difference until 30 seconds after they smoke it. And they don't, and they won't feel anything. Trust me, like it's exactly the same. And CBD, the thing about CBD flower is, since it doesn't get you high, it's less, people don't like it as much. So they've been breeding that flower for smell. So to get the odor higher and make it more flavorful, they've been breeding it to maximize odor. So these CBD farms, I think what you're going to get, like I heard one of the other farmers kind of pissed off, you're going to get vindictive CBD flower farms. So vindictively, if a neighbor complains about the smell, you're going to get a huge CBD flower farm planted right next to that neighbor, and it's 100% legal. So just, giving you a heads up of what could happen if that happens. And that thing I was talking about earlier, where if you ban any licenses in the county, that RCW that I quoted you guys, you don't get your excise tax. So it's 250 grand that you're checking out the door because you don't want outdoor cannabis farms. So you better, I'm just a public, so you better check that through staff. I would ask them why they didn't tell you about that. And then the other thing is people think outdoor farms smell more, but they don't. That's a big disclaimer. That's a big misnomer. I can't put my plants outdoor until like March or April. And you guys' odor complaints all came in like February, when actually February 9th, when the temperature outside was 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So really, I think they're falsified. And I think they were copied across the board. Like if you look at the wording, they're like, people copied the odor complaints to each other. So I went out there after I saw that and I inspected each facility. None of the outdoor facilities smelled, and all but 2 of the indoor ones smelled.
Todd Baker, go ahead, please.
Hi there. Thanks. I appreciate the time again. I spoke a little bit earlier, but I want to reiterate I think that nobody that is speaking against or wanting to change the codes has anything against marijuana per se. They just have they want to be in a location in a rural area where those farms are spread out. They're not huge farms, they're spread out. Just so the density and that's what creates the problem. The large farms, the close density, if we could all work together and talk about putting farms close together, putting farms close to schools, putting, large farms in rural areas where, people live. The smaller farms dotted throughout it are just fine. It's the big guys that are going to crush the little guys anyway, and so I believe that we should really talk about how many licenses per acre or per area, and how many, how close to schools, and somebody's going to buy up a whole bunch of licenses. Hopefully they can't do 5 in a row next to 3 houses. That's where the issue is. And the big producers, that's going to turn into, well, that is a problem now. So anyway, that's what I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Eliza, go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
We can, yeah.
Okay, my name is Eliza Steele, and I just want to really mention how great it is to be having a conversation about all this in this way, from all fronts. And I actually do farm and grow food, and I just wanted to talk about the comparison that's going on between agricultural crops and marijuana crop. I mean, I don't see agricultural farms having to have an 8-foot fence with security cameras and security signs and all sorts of kind of pretty intense measures to protect that cash crop. So yes, it does bring in a good amount of money is being talked about on tax front, but at what cost to the rural areas that are supposed to be maintaining a rural character? It's just something to consider. And, I think it is important to kind of keep circling back to the density issue. There is cumulative effects when you can put these next to each other. It's not just adding the fact that it's a tier 3 next to a tier 1. It's that there could be a tier 2 next to it. There could be another tier 3 right on the other side of that. And there's nothing in the code right now to kind of dictate anything on that front. And that is, I would assume, I'm not personally a grower, but I am friends with growers that are smaller grows, and that's damaging to their business. It's not great. So I just think that it's important and good conversations are being had about this and how to protect kind of everybody involved. And yeah, so I just wanted to mention those facts, and there's probably some others that I'm forgetting right now, but I'm just really appreciative that this is a conversation that's being had. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak that has not spoken yet? I think, Joshua, did you speak earlier?
Yeah, of course. I have to actually go.
You did? Okay. All right. Okay. I think we've had everybody, I believe Joshua spoke earlier. I think everybody that wanted to speak spoken. Commissioners, what's the pleasure? Is everybody ready to adjourn? Seeing some. Okay, planning commission meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, attendees.
You guys.